Some watchdogs on the Chesapeake Bay are dealing with a big disappointment. An interstate commission that sets rules for catching a really important fish species in the bay took a pass on tightening up regulations.
And that has raised the alarm for organizations like the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Here's our environmental impact reporter Scott Broom to tell us what's going on there.
Now, if you're not into fishing, just let me assure you that striped bass, also known as rockfish, in the Chesapeake region are a really big deal. One study estimated the total economic impact in Maryland alone was over $800 million a year from all the tourism and boats and marinas equipment and commercial catch for the fish markets too. But there's a big problem. For 6 years straight, the rockfish have not been reproducing like they should. It happened again this spring, and it's happening even though states like Maryland have been adopting stricter and stricter limits and seasons. Monday, a group called the States Marine Fisheries Commission met in Arlington to consider even more restrictions, but the commission decided not to act for now, and that sparked this conversation today with Dr. Allison Colden, the Maryland director of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation.
This was a disappointing decision for sure, and we believe that managers are taking some risks and delaying any action to 2026 or beyond. We know from Maryland's Young of Years survey that we're facing in the future 6 consecutive years of incredibly poor reproduction out of the Chesapeake Bay, which accounts for anywhere between 70 to 90% of all of the striped bass along the Atlantic coast. So what happens here in the Chesapeake Bay is a crystal ball for what we see in the future, and what we see in the future is bleak.
Colden and I also talked about the possibility of a moratorium someday on catching rockfish, which is credited with saving the species back in the 1980s and 90s. She said, "We cannot count on that working again if things really get bad."
We know the water temperatures are warmer. We know dissolved oxygen continues to be a challenge. We know that blue catfish and other invasive species are currently inhabiting those upper spawning reaches that striped bass need and young striped bass need to thrive and survive. We know that climate change is changing some of the timing of the phytoplankton blooms and things that those young fish need to make it from a just hatched fish to a juvenile. So many things have changed, and right now we're unsure whether a moratorium would actually result in the same rebound or recovery that we saw in the 80s and early 90s.
Colden says the next couple of years are make or break. The last time there was good reproduction for rockfish was in 2017 and 18, and those fish are now mature and ready to spawn the next generation if too many of them don't get caught. A cold, wet spring usually means good reproduction, so keep your fingers crossed for that if you like rockfish. From the Chesapeake Bay. In Maryland, Scott Broom, WUSA 9.